What's up, everybody? Good late afternoon. Hope you guys are doing well today. And I've got to make one more Jalen Milroe video. I know I've discussed him more than enough already today, but I feel like there's one more angle on this that needs to be explored that doesn't really fit in with any of the prior videos. And it also doesn't really fit in all that much with him as a player, even. Like, what I'm about to talk about in this video, it has to do with Jalen Milroe, but it also kind of doesn't. It also kind of involves just the circumstances and situation around Jalen Milroe. And I feel like this is important. I feel like this needs to be understood. I feel like without this context, it's not fully clear why I didn't really like this pick. With the 4 videos I made earlier today, and by the way, if you haven't already seen those videos, go watch them, go check them out. I feel like I did a pretty good job explaining why I'm not high on his prospects in the NFL, but I don't think that fully captures why I did not like this pick at all. Why this is probably my least favorite Seahawks pick since Jordan Brooks. And that says a lot for a 3rd round pick, but let's talk about Jalen Milroe just a little bit more. And what we're going to do in this video is talk about scenarios. We're going to talk about context. We're going to try to understand what a good path or bad path for Jalen Milroe looks like. And we're going to, in my opinion anyway, come to the conclusion that either way, it's not great. Unless Jalen Milroe becomes one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league, just an absolute assassin, just elite, like not even great, but elite, I'm not jumping up and down about this. First, please like this video if you haven't already. Click the thumbs up button. Subscribe if you're new. Click the bell for notifications. Become a channel member for $2 a month. Those are the best ways to support the channel. So, Jalen Milroe, again, doesn't necessarily have a lot to do with this. A lot of this has to do with the circumstances. Now, I'm not going to discuss the Sam Darnold angle too much in this video. There is a Sam Darnold angle, right? There is a possibility that Sam Darnold goes out there for the Seahawks this year and plays amazing. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He plays as good or better compared to last year in Minnesota. He's like our Josh Allen or our Justin Herbert or whatever, and he's awesome. That is a possibility. And it's possible that he also goes out there next year, 2026, and he balls out and is awesome, and we do a lot of great things with him, and we end up giving him some monster contract extension after that season, and he's our franchise guy. I'm not really going to talk about that. It can happen, and if it happens, yes, the Jalen Milroe pick kind of becomes a waste, but who cares? Well, what are we going to care about at all? Who's going to be mad about that at that point? We have an elite quarterback. Like, I don't care about wasting a 3rd round pick if we end up with an elite quarterback anyway. That's just like trivia at that point. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, okay, first, let's start with the baseline assumption, which is that does not happen, which is that Sam Darnold is either one of the following. He's bad, he's below average, he's average, he's okay, he's decent, he's good. You know, one of those. If he's somewhere in there where he is, let's say, a workable starting quarterback, but not necessarily somebody we're super excited about going forward, where he's capable, he's a good stopgap, but he's not the franchise guy, which is, I think, probably the most realistic scenario. You take a look at Sam Darnold's contract. It's pretty clearly meant to be a 2-year deal at the end of the day. I know you can get out of it after 1 if you really want to, but it's still not good to get out of it after 1 year. The cap hit next year in 2026 is almost $34 million. Dead cap on letting him go or trading him, by the way, is 25.6. So clearly this is meant to be a multi-year contract. And we also know that Jalen Milroe, with all the things he needs to work on, probably needs to sit on the bench for 2 years. If you put him out there this year at quarterback or next year at quarterback, you're asking for trouble. I think that that is relatively evident. So either way, even without that consideration, it seems to me that the plan is have Sam Darnold be your quarterback for the next 2 years. Do not play or barely play Jalen Milroe. Let him learn on the sideline. Let him learn in practice. And then in 2027, you move off of Darnold and Milroe gets his opportunity. That is the likely, again, not necessarily guaranteed, that is the likely outcome here. And it's also the outcome where Milroe gets the best opportunity to succeed. Okay? So let's start there and think about what that means going forward. For one, in about 11 months from now, the Seahawks are going to be sitting there and they're not going to have a very good idea of what they have in Milroe yet. He hasn't finished learning and he's barely played. It's not going to be clear what Milroe is as a quarterback. He is still going to be a mystery box, which means your ability to maybe tap into next year's quarterback class is hampered. Yeah, you might feel like you need a quarterback, but you're not going to be sure. Let's say we don't have a very good year next year, or even if we have a pretty good year next year, whatever, and we're sitting there with our first round pick, because right now we still have it, and we're thinking to ourselves, okay, we got some good quarterbacks we can take here, right? It's not just the big guns. Like right now, everyone knows about Arch Manning. He's the big gun coming out next year. Maybe. You also have Garrett Nussmeier, interesting player out of LSU. Drew Allar, the Penn State guy. Cade Klubnik, I really like him, the Clemson guy. Lenora Sellers, the South Carolina quarterback. Nico Iamaleava. I know there are problems there, but he's a very tantalizing talent. And honestly, that I'm not even done listing all the interesting guys. Malachi Nelson, the UTEP quarterback, has some appeal to him. John Mateer, he was playing for the Cougars last year. This year he's in Oklahoma. If he gets in the Heisman race, he's probably going to be a hot prospect. So it's a good quarterback class next year. I think much better than this year's. And you might feel like you can't really go that way because you still have Milroe and you have no idea what he is. So you don't want to end up in a scenario where you take a quarterback in 2026 with a high pick and you're like, okay, one of those two picks will end up being wasted because you can only have one quarterback. So what if the Seahawks find themselves in a situation next year where they could draft Drew Allar, where they could draft Cade Klubnik, where they could draft Lenora Sellers, and they don't do it simply because we have to give Milroe his chance first? I'm not going to be too thrilled about that because to me, those guys that I listed are far more interesting as NFL quarterbacks than Milroe. And maybe some people don't agree, and that's fine. I'm sure some of these guys are going to play not very well in 2025 and hurt their stock, and maybe we'll feel differently in a year. But I'm pretty up on this QB class. And if we end up not being able to touch it because of Milroe's presence on the roster, then that's an impact that is felt beyond just the pick itself. That is the kind of stuff that I'm thinking about when I get really down on this pick. And by the way, some of the quarterbacks that don't declare in 2026 will declare in 2027. And you still might be in the same spot in 2027 where you still feel like you can't take a quarterback because you've got Milroe and he maybe still hasn't gotten a chance to really play yet. So you see what I'm saying? Where the scenario just kind of sets itself up to create problems down the line. Now, let's get to Milroe himself for a little bit here, because at that point, 2027 comes around, you hand him the reins, he's your quarterback for 2027. There are two scenarios here, right? Two ways this can play out. Let's talk about the first one. This is, I personally feel like the more likely one. But even if you like him, you have to admit it's a possibility. He's not good. He goes out there in 2027 after sitting on the bench for 2 years, and he's not good. He doesn't play well. And, okay, people are going to say, well, he didn't make very much money. He was a third round pick, whatever. No harm, no foul. Well, I would disagree with that on the basis of the fact that you might have passed up the opportunity to get a really good quarterback in a previous draft because you had Milroe. But let me ask you guys something. Do you guys remember this guy? Do you guys remember this guy? No, this is not Devin Witherspoon. He's wearing the same number as Devin Witherspoon, but this is Trey Flowers. A lot of you guys probably remember him from 2018 to 2021. He was a Seahawk. He was a cornerback. He had some decent moments in the first couple years of his career, but by the time he left, he was one of the more hated Seahawks players of all time. I think he got a little bit of a bum rap. I think people overhated him a little bit, but people didn't like him. He wasn't good. And midway through his fourth year here, he was out. Now, here's the thing with Trey Flowers. You didn't spend a big draft pick on him, right? He was a 5th round pick. He was a mid-day 3 pick, basically a chuck at the dartboard like a lot of 5th round, 6th round, 7th round picks are, right? It's not about the money. In his career, the amount of money the Seahawks paid Trey Flowers was $2.6 million, and this was across 3.5 seasons. So we didn't pay him very much either. He made very little money. He was making about as much money as an end of the roster guy. So it's not about either of those things. What was the issue with Trey Flowers? It wasn't that we invested a big pick in him. It wasn't the fact that we invested a lot of money in him. It was time. We invested time into Trey Flowers. That's what made this hurt, because Trey Flowers was a guy that Pete Carroll gave a starting job very early in his career. He was starting as a rookie, and we saw some positive signs with him. Some things were coming along with him. We kind of liked it. And then after a couple years, things started to slip, but we were like, okay, we're going to fix this. And eventually, all this time we're putting into him, the reps in practice, the reps in games, the opportunity to play in games where a lot of those reps are bad, but it's okay. It's okay because the fruit of our labor is going to get paid off soon. Eventually, he's going to be a really good player because of all this time we're investing into him. And then it's great. It'll be worth the growing pains. And then what happened? 2020, he played bad. 2021, he played bad. We cut him. He was out of here. We never got to the fruits of the labor. We just labored. We never got the good Trey Flowers, even though we made a time investment, time that could have been spent on a different player, time that could have been spent on a veteran that would have played better than Trey Flowers, who wouldn't have made the mistakes that Trey Flowers did. That's where the pain comes in. That's why Trey Flowers is so hated. We built him up over the course of multiple years, thinking this is the year he figures it out, becomes a really good NFL player. Never happened. That is the pain in this scenario, where you spend 2 years training Jalen Milroe, and then you give him your starting quarterback job for 2027, and if he's not good, then you wasted that time. And that is felt way more than money. That is felt way more than the draft pick. Because, yeah, Milroe was barely a 3rd-round pick. Milroe is going to make $6 to $7 million against the cap in his next 4 years as a Seahawk, assuming he's on the team that long. But that is the issue. But let's say, for the sake of argument, let's say Jalen Milroe is good. Let's go the other way. Let's cover our other base here, because that could happen too. Jalen Milroe goes out there in 2027, plays good. And we feel like, okay, we've got a starting caliber quarterback here. He's worked out. We taught him well over the last 2 years. He benefited sitting behind Sam Darnold for those 2 years. And now we're good to go. He's going to give us a good 2027 season. Maybe the team is good. Maybe they're just okay, whatever. Things are good. Guess what happens? It's the end of the 3rd year of his deal. And what happens to an NFL player after their 3rd year? They go to the front office with their hand out. It's time for them to get extended. They're entering the last year of their deal. They can now negotiate an extension, and they're going to have some leverage here. They're going to be like, hey, take care of me early. Take care of me now. I've given you the good play now. I gave you the 2027 season where I played at a high level, and now I want to get paid. And what are quarterbacks going to get paid by the time you get to 2028? What is Jalen Milroe going to want? $65 million a year? Probably. That's not an exaggeration, by the way. If the quarterback market goes up the way that the salary cap seems to be going up, you are probably looking at $65 million a year for a quarterback contract for a franchise or even slightly below franchise level player. That is how this works. Okay? And if you doubt that for 1 second, if you think for 1 second that there's no way Jalen Milroe will have one good season and then immediately ask for $65 million a year, I point you to Jordan Love. Jordan Love, okay? First round pick of the Packers in 2020. Didn't touch the field in 2020. Played a little bit in 2021. Played a little bit in 2022. And then 4th year, he's the starter. He gets a full starting season for the Packers. And he plays good. Plays good, honest football. Does a little bit of damage with his legs. He's pretty efficient. Completion percentage might be a little bit low, but he's doing the thing. Green Bay has a pretty good offensive season. They end up making the 7 seed, and they win a playoff game. Jordan Love plays good in that playoff game. Not stellar. He was thrown mostly to wide open receivers, but he does the thing. And then he kind of stinks it up against the just being honest, kind of stinks it up against the Niners and throws that game away. But has one good season, and that's all he has. What happens that offseason? He almost breaks the record. Signs a $55 million a year extension. Now, that's on top of the money he was already going to make in that next year, I guess. But actually, that might have depended. I can't even remember if they picked up the 5th-year option. But either way, $55 million a year on this extension. 4 years, $220 million off of one good year. And by the way, do you think the Packers are thrilled about this contract right now? I don't think I would be. I think Jordan Love depends very heavily on an offensive genius at head coach here. I don't think they're thrilled about the money that's coming here, but that's what you do. You play the game or you don't get to have the quarterback. And again, Jordan Love didn't win MVP. Jordan Love didn't make the All-Pro team. He was good. He was really good. Maybe not, I don't know if he was great. That's debatable. Maybe he was great. But you see what I'm saying here? This is how this works. One good season, and you're getting paid. And by the way, if you don't pay him, if he's even willing to play for you in 2028, you're going to have to pay him more the next offseason. It's going to be like $70 million a year. So you're going to have to either make a massive investment in this player immediately after one good year, knowing that it could just be one good year. Like, we've seen it before. Now, look, if he plays well in 2027, I would probably be willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and assume that he's good. But what if he's not? What if it's just a 1-year hit thing where that ends up being the peak of his career? That happens, especially with these hyper-athletic quarterbacks that can kind of get figured out by coaching over time. So what if you end up paying him a ton of money and then you find out, hey, he's not that great? Like, even if he's on the level of a Jordan Love, who I think is just good, not great, not even very good, just good. Or what if he's on the level of a Tua or a Jared Goff, guys who have also gotten massive contracts? These are all things that are very realistically possible, even in a good path for Mr. Milroe. And that's the part where I struggle to find the actual good route here. The good route is Milroe becomes a top 5 quarterback. He needs to be Lamar Jackson, basically. He needs to be as good as Lamar Jackson, and that's a lot to ask. That's a lot to ask, people. So that is why I reacted the way that I did when the Seahawks drafted Milroe. I mean, some of this stuff, maybe it didn't immediately occur to me the moment we took him, but when you look at it like this, you have all these scenarios play out, and you're like, okay, there's a chance that this works out the way we're planning, and we only get one good year. Like, what if we decide, oh, let's just trade him after 2027 so we don't have to pay him? Well, okay, you might get a lot of good trade compensation, I guess. Most teams seem unwilling to make those, like nobody was willing to trade for Lamar Jackson a couple years ago, supposedly, so I don't know if that would even happen or not. But even if you do manage to get somebody to pull the trigger on a big Milroe trade after that 3rd year rather than paying him, well, now, again, you still don't have a quarterback, and you only got him for the 1 year. So hopefully that explained my stances a little bit here. It just kind of highlights that this is almost a, I don't want to say a no-win scenario, but even the good stuff is fraught with peril. Even the good scenarios have real problems, even if things go according to plan. And by the way, I'm not going to spend any time in this video talking about the scenario where Milroe starts as a rookie and is great immediately, because that's so unfathomable. I'm not even going to spend time thinking about it here, but the point I'm trying to make is this is a narrow path, and I'd rather be walking that narrow path with a prospect I liked more, or more of a finished product who could at least give us multiple years on the rookie deal. I don't know. See you guys later. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think.